Well then, Heather, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm very happy to chat with you today. So, you work with trauma, childhood trauma. What led you? What led you to this spot? How'd you get here?
Well, I never thought I would work with childhood trauma, but I come from a lot of it. And it was really in my 30s of getting sick and having near-death experiences that I was led back to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I was from, born and raised. And at first I was just doing Kundalini yoga, meditations, a lot of breath work. I was still working in the creative arts with dance, theater, acting. I had a real diverse background, which I now realize is an asset because it's not just one box, not one building, but, sort of the divine mother was kind of exposing me to a lot of different scenarios.
Mm,
And it was really a client that came up and said, "Do you do private work?" that started me doing private coaching.
hmm
Um, what led me to trauma? Let me think about this for a moment because I actually want to try to pinpoint the exact. Hmm. Okay. Um, so I had been taking notes. I was hired into schools that had a lot of violence and a lot of disruption. There were a lot of yoga teachers leaving the jobs.
hmm
And
About how old are you here?
I'm in my 30s.
In your 30s.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm in Pittsburgh. This is the beginning sort of scenario into the trauma coaching.
hmm
And through that work, it was all intuitive. I would meditate, I would go in with a tool.
hmm
There usually was opposition. The tool would work. And what I came to the conclusion is the children, whether they were disabled, whether they were a charter school, they were not the issue. The issues were the environment around them and the training around them.
hmm
So these people were not trained. They were coming to reactions. These kids are bad, or we need to do this type of thing.
mm
And really, it was either sound frequency, it was playing hip hop that was disrupting them, or it was children sense when a real energy that's authentic comes in the room.
Sure.
And they know they can eventually take off their mask. Now, some of the troubled schools, it took 3 or 4 days of them challenging me, you know, these
Yeah.
challenges. But it was through all of this that I was asking, I would actually say Mother Mary at the time.
hmm
I was asking, what am I supposed to do? I was kind of lost in life, my identity, because I had so much trauma in me. I was kind of all over the place. And I got the message, the inner voice, uh, go to Austin, Texas. So I thought I was going to move there.
hmm
And I saw, that there was auditions for tap dancing. I had been a professional tap dancer and I was kind of confused. I thought, why am I being led to Austin, Texas? I retired my tap dancing career. I'm not sure why I'm going there, but I
hmm
went to this audition thinking maybe I'm supposed to continue the showbiz career. I go into the tap dancing audition, and in the middle of it, I'm like, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. I literally left the audition and I asked, where's your closest yoga center? And it was in walking distance. So I walked to the yoga center. It was a Sunday. They were open with the storefront, but there weren't any classes. I took this beautiful brochure, and I don't remember the name of it. I didn't even read the brochure. I get on the plane, I go home. In the middle of the night, they're like, you should read the brochure. You should read the brochure. So I pick it out, and this couple basically started their own private practice in their apartment. And then it grew. And
hmm
right there, I was like, you're supposed to start a private practice in your apartment. So I had a small apartment, so I cleared out space. And then the next week, I got a phone call. I was led in the beginning of my career in trauma with stroke clients. And the stroke clients were, physical therapists. They had PhD degrees. They were in the medical field. And so it was very bizarre for me at that moment, because I had a low self-esteem. I had been ridiculed, being creative, but
Mm-hmm.
not having the degrees.
Yeah.
Um, Definitely my family looked down upon certain aspects of, they didn't think I was intelligent. So I had a really, really low self-esteem at this moment. And here I am, massive stroke clients who have done everything with the highest degrees, and they're going to be disabled for the rest of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Like 32, 40 years old. We're not even talking like, we're talking young souls here. And that became my PhD. That became the classroom, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they're coming in, and I'm realizing, well, the regular Kundalini yoga and the basic universal meditations that have PubMed research are not going to do it for this situation. And that's when these tools started coming in: medical grade water, electrolyzed reduced water, which has tons of PubMed research, brain protocols for PTSD, OCD, and childhood trauma. Now, what would that have to do with stroke?
Mm-hmm.
Well, no one ever considered talking to these individuals about their inner selves and their depressions and their struggles
Mm-hmm.
and their soul
And the things that happen to them.
and the things that happen to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I found that this rewiring, doing these protocols, brain, finger placement, breath placement, was starting to unravel their shaking, especially the water. That's when I was like, there's something to this. One of my clients, 32 years old, massive stroke, physical, very smart. She could research PubMed, and she was all PubMed, but she was angry at her field. That's what was interesting about these clients. They were angry at their field, but they were very clinical studied. And
Mm.
so, yeah, it makes it a very interesting project for me, right? So as
Mm-hmm.
they are drinking this water and the tremors are stopping and they're getting out of depression, which gets them in the game of rehabilitation. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
we want. I'm doing the work too with them. I'm
What do you mean?
starting to drink a
Oh,
gallon
so
a
you're
day.
doing it all too, yeah.
I'm doing this brain work. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost a dance of the universe introducing me into a field that I had I probably signed up before I came into this life, but I had no agenda
Mm-hmm.
of doing it. But it was partly to save myself and to start understanding this stuff. So that's the
Ah,
intro into it. Now, it led down a lot of roads.
sure, sure.
And I
Yeah.
stopped working with that particular population when I had my first dark night of the soul and had to take time off. And then it was like
When was
another
that?
assignment, you know?
When was that?
My first dark night of the soul was when I was 40 years
Okay.
old.
So all this happened in your 30s. What was your practice or your processing of your own trauma before this happened? Was this the catalyst of working with these stroke patients? Is this where you started working with your own personal trauma?
It was one of the catalysts.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the first catalyst was a boy I grew up with that I talk about in my book series coming up, that we held hands every day in high school, which was a really big deal for me.
Mm-hmm.
When I first came back to Pittsburgh, we dated for just a few months.
In your
He,
30s?
in my 30s, he
Okay.
was the catalyst in a very loving way, and I trusted him probably more than anyone else. There was a soul connection, that there was something off. And because he had a criminal justice career and he had done more traditional therapy work, and he had exited his mom from his life, he had done more, he was able to see that there were a lot of basic things that were not working right in intimate relationships.
Mm.
And because I trusted and loved him from a very deep level, I wouldn't say romantic love, I would say more of just a deep love, he was the catalyst into the, oh, I am unhappy and my brain is fogged and I, you know, there was a lot of amnesia, and obviously there was a lot of frozenness in my body, unbelievably, you know, it's hard for people to understand how the body works to store trauma.
Hmm.
So I was a great dancer. I was an incredible dancer, actually. No one would have thought she's got brain damage. She's got a lot of trauma in her body. But looking at my body at 53 now and being really young and flexible and not having any pain when I wake up in the morning and seeing how it's anti-aging. Yeah. And then seeing the
So,
cancer signs, you know that deal. Yeah.
so you're saying that the trauma that was still unprocessed inside of you was having physiological effects.
Hmm.
And you were seeing that in this relationship. You were seeing things like brain fog or being stiff and frozen in your body, which, yeah, when you
Hmm.
go through trauma, especially things that are really scary, you get really stiff, your body gets stiff. So, yes, this makes sense. The brain fog, major adaptation to trauma. So, that's all still present. And you're starting to see it in your 30s.
And you make a good point. That's very wonderful that you're saying this, because he, being a criminal justice, that education of viewing
Hmm.
people, always having to view. And so he had that lens to lend, because you go, why didn't anyone else notice these things? You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
that's giving him, mastery in that sense.
Hmm. So, it was kind of a mirror.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so he helped you bring awareness to these dynamics. Were you seeing them beforehand, or was he the relationship with him? I won't say he did it, but was the relationship what
No,
helped you
the
see it?
relationship and his communication skills
Mm,
initiated. And we didn't last very long. I went into Reiki energy. I was led to that spiritually.
mm-hmm,
And then I think he wanted to make sure I was secure enough before he exited.
okay. And then that transitions into going to Austin and
Yes.
starting this practice. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you start working with your own trauma and you start to see all of these um, effects, symptoms, adaptations that are left over from the trauma. What's this process looking like for you where you're starting to acknowledge these um, residuals left over from childhood that are still showing up today? What does it look like when you start engaging with those?
For me, um, because it was such severe physical trauma as well as emotional, mental, spiritual, but we have to say that being choked almost to death at age 8 to 9 repeatedly is a very, very serious. If you talk to a chiropractor,
Yeah.
you're really doing a lot of internal damage. So,
Yes.
um, once I started doing the energy Reiki work and I started to I had a lot of trouble with the brain protocols. To do a 3-minute brain exercise was exhausting to me, just like a stroke client.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you don't have a medical grade water, you're not going to do it. You
Mm-hmm.
just don't have the energy. So that's where these tools had to come in to
Mm-hmm.
assist to stay in the game.
Yeah.
Um, I was frozen,
Tools.
so the water helped get into, there's a quantum physics to it, cry. I didn't really cry much in my life, wasn't allowed to. And I noticed that with my clients,
Mm-hmm.
crying more. So there was an interesting dance with that in the beginning, starting to cry and feel stuff, having been severely repressed. But as far as like my first dark night of the soul, was pretty scary. Uh, I basically felt like I almost had a massive, like a mini stroke. And everything, I was walking straight, but everything was like this, tilted. You could think of it as vertigo.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't want to go to the hospital and be medicated.
Mm-hmm.
I had been severely over medicated from age 10 to 16. And I knew at that moment of how it was terrifying. I was scared, but I knew it was trauma. And I was just connecting to what I call Mother Mary. I'm not religious, but I connect to the divine Mother Mary, these wonderful women that we don't hear about much in the Bible, the healers. Anna, the great grandmother, we don't hear about these women and incredible healers. And I'm channeling into Yahshua, of course, at that time period. And, within a few days, I was okay. I'm not
Hmm.
saying I was great,
Yeah.
but I was doable. And it was a slow process of that because there was so much trauma in my body. I mean, you can only go so long before the cancers build up, before the
Hmm.
Alzheimer's builds it. For me, it would have been shorter. We know you lose a lot of life if you're not healing this stuff internally. So, and I reached out. This is kind of when my family started to outcast me when I came out, what my mother had done. So there was a lot of emotional anguish because I was left
Mm.
alone. And I was
Yeah.
almost kind of like, felt like, am, why am I the problem? That was like, I'm
Mm.
being blamed almost or punished by being in
Hmm.
isolation. Why am I? And I realize it's because of their own traumas and their own fears
Mm.
of the reality of how evil the acts
Hmm.
were of my childhood abuse. That's my conclusion.
So the pattern came back around again.
What pattern?
The dynamics from your childhood.
Oh, they came back many times in
Yeah,
through my book
of
series with
course.
many different situations.
Yeah.
Yes,
And it gave you an
absolutely.
opportunity to engage with it differently.
It gave me an opportunity to see the reality of it.
Hmm.
It gave me the opportunity to start asking questions from a community, family, and society place,
Hmm.
which takes time. You can't do that in the beginning when you're just struggling and surviving. At
Yeah.
this point, yeah, I have a lot to say about why aren't we studying predators more and asking for more accountability in that. Um, and I have worked with so many victims. We work hard. We usually downplay what's been done to us
Hmm.
because society or family or community is uncomfortable with it. I think we need to get uncomfortable with the predators. I
Okay.
think we need to reverse that dyslexia, which, by the way, there's a brain protocol in the childhood brain protocol, a medical meditation for that. I never thought of myself as dyslexia.
Hmm.
My dad was from his own journey of trauma. But when my dad passed in 2022 and started speaking to me, he's like, you need to do that medical meditation. And yes, he was right. I think a lot of people, whether they have childhood abuse or they have generational bloodline, which I know you know, there is a dyslexia emotionally going on too.
Hmm.
So that
Yeah,
was
there's
a lot
intergenerational patterns here.
yeah,
The people who hurt you learned it from somewhere.
right,
Hmm.
right.
Yeah. And so here we have all these stored up emotions, feelings, responses, adaptations. And it seems like maybe not for the first time, but this is a major point in your life where the floodgates open, so to speak. And those defenses, the adaptation that was saying, if you cry, you get in trouble, or you get ridiculed or judged, or you make other people uncomfortable and you threaten your relationship, so suppress your emotions, that defense seemed to soften a little bit. And it was working with the stroke patients and going through this protocol, so to speak, that seemed to open up those defenses a little bit and allow the things that were stored up inside of you to begin to process. And it sounds like that also helped you to change the perspective, so to speak, see things in a different light.
Beautifully said.
You
Yeah.
said it. I'm reflecting here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that was it right there.
Hmm.
What was it like for you when you have these patterns, these adaptations that are saying emotions are dangerous, these feelings are dangerous, and it's in many ways resembling a stroke in some ways? It sounds very threatening, and then you have all of this coming up. What's that like for you?
I was afraid I was going to die. back then when I think about those moments and the shaking
Hmm.
and the pressure, I'm like, Am I gonna die?" Because that's what that little girl was
Hmm.
obviously processing every time she was being attacked from behind, but couldn't even go there,
Yeah,
obviously.
that was the
S
fear when you were
that
a kid.
mhm.
So, legitimately, the experience that was too painful for you to deal with as a child, that was repressed and stuffed away, was coming back for you to engage with as an adult.
Oh, yeah. And I'm choosing to, because I walk into the door of accepting the stroke client, even though I
Hmm.
was insecure about it, but I'm disciplined and I'm honest if I didn't feel I could help her, but actually within a few sessions, she notated how much I was helping her and how my education, which is rooted in my soul database, wasn't in her education. And part of that was breath work, not just breathing, but the psychology of what your breath is telling you, because there's a whole intellect between breath work that I
Mm.
go through that is very different than the yogi. It's really deep because for me, yeah, every muscle, every bone had a story, not just from childhood, but from my ancestors that I would learn as the process continued. But I was shocked. We're now nurses and they're now doing breath work, but back then they weren't doing it at all. And actually, they
Some
were
are.
teaching reversal. They were teaching it
Hmm.
reversed, which is so she was. It was interesting to watch her successes and those little
Hmm.
successes when you can't talk and you're walking with a cane at 34 years old is a big deal, just like for me. So we were like mirroring, gave me the confidence to dig deeper. So I was definitely didn't have much of a social life. Once I was working with clients, afterwards I was studying or
Hmm.
doing the work on myself.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, this is an interesting mirror, then, Heather, because you mentioned there were criticisms from childhood of not being good enough, not being worthy, the judgments, the evaluations, the punishments. And then here you find yourself in this place where there's this comparison, evaluations of other people, medical degrees, PhDs, nurses, experience, and all this other credentialing that makes you important. And so again, we see very similar patterns reemerging again and allowing you to engage with them in new ways. And it sounds to me like that sense of that belief of unworthiness is starting to shift at this point.
You mean in this moment?
At this time in your life.
Yeah,
Maybe right here, but
unconsciously it did. I think it
hmm.
took a little longer and I had received so many medical type clients throughout the years.
Hmm.
Eventually it was people who left their system
Hmm.
to start a new system, whether that was working with the waters or working with oils or working with spirituality. They were tired of their system.
Yeah.
And for me, I think it was a healing because I didn't like doctors up until that point. They were very negative and over medicating me, and they didn't see, me as a child. Looked like I had a massive stroke. Anybody can look at those pictures on my website. It's pretty clear I don't look okay. So I think there was a healing in that these human beings chose, whether it was they went through their own trauma stroke or their own health issues to find out it's childhood trauma. And then they're asking, why doesn't our education have any of this stuff? Like, what's going
Mm.
And then it makes me feel validated when my whole family eh, is dismissing and, you know, oh, she's doing a little water thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
She does a little, you know what I mean? Kind of
Hmm.
like that type of energy. So there's that yin yang thing happening.
What emotion do you think you're feeling or were feeling during this time where you're engaging with these medical professionals? They're not seeing what you're going through. and they're pushing these various agendas. What is that right there that you're feeling?
I felt violated by them as a child.
Yeah.
And I had worked with other clients that were over medicated. We're talking 16 pills a day at age
Wow.
12, 13. Yeah. Um, there is a system in different pockets, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's senior care, because I saw that too,
Mm-hmm.
a violation
Yeah.
when a soul is not have an advocate for them
Mm-hmm.
that they can trust,
Mm-hmm.
And so there wasn't a question of why is my throat look like I have mumps and it's so swollen and I can't talk? Why can't
Right.
I move my head for 2 weeks? Why am I always having infections all the time? And my
Mm-hmm.
face doesn't look the same as it did 2 years ago. Huh.
Yeah.
There wasn't any of that. So I didn't feel seen. I felt
Right.
violated.
Yeah.
And I was angry at the system because of
Angry.
that. Angry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Being violated is what happens. So here, yeah, you're getting strangled daily and nobody sees it. And in fact, the way that they respond to it is have some medications. Nobody's going to ask any questions to try to figure out what's causing this. Nobody wants to touch it. Nobody wants to look at it. And instead, let's just medicate you. Yeah. That's the violation that's happening there, the not being seen, the being dismissed. And that's very threatening. So it would make complete sense that anger would be here. Yeah.
Thank you for voicing it in the way that you do. It's healing for me right now to hear it in your psychology. So I appreciate this conversation.
Thank you. I'm happy to hear that. Yeah, that's what you went through. And, if I were going to ask you a question here, Heather, which was during that time between 8 and 12 years old where you're going through all this terrible trauma, what do you think you really needed then?
I needed my dad to wake up because he was on antidepressants. I needed him to see the reality that his wife was a rageaholic and to somehow get us away from her or to get her help or something had to
Mm,
change.
okay. So you needed your dad to be there,
I needed my dad to be there.
not just be there. I mean, he was physically there, but he wasn't attuned to you. So he needs to be there. He needs to see you.
He's in
He ne-
disassociation at that moment. Yeah.
he's totally disconnected,
hmm
checked out.
From his own traumas. Yeah. And from that karmic energy of them.
Yeah. Well, when you go through trauma and you don't have the resources to deal with it, there's only a couple of things that you can do. You can set boundaries with it, make it stop. But as a kid, it's not an option. You don't even know if it's possible. And if you do, it's going to make things more dangerous for you. So that's the first option. That's not possible. You can go away physically, you can leave. But again, is an 8-year-old really going to be able to say, okay, I'm going to pack up and go to New Mexico and start a new life? You're completely, hopelessly dependent on the relationships to survive.
Absolutely. And there's brain damage forming too. So
Mm-hmm.
can't even really think about that because
Yeah.
can't really think at this moment.
And
Yeah.
that's the next one right there. That's the only option that's left is then you check out, you go away mentally, you disconnect. And so your dad was there and this was happening to you too. It's the same intergenerational pattern. And so what you really needed was somebody to be there, somebody to see you, to hear and understand what you're going through. In other words, to be attuned to what your experience is. Of course, that's what every kid needs when they're developing. That is the fundamental requisite for healthy development is to have a mature, regulated, attuned adult that you can model. So that's what you really needed. And then, of course, somebody to offer some protection, maybe some comfort
Right.
consistently.
Consistently.
And so
Yes.
here, when we're talking and I'm seeing your experience, you say, oh, wow, this is healing. Huh, it's funny how that works, isn't it? It's like those unmet needs from childhood are getting met in some way.
Yeah, because of the way you're articulating it. The way
Hmm.
you're going into one scenario and really spending time with it is nice instead of just fluffing over, which there's nothing wrong with that, but a lot of podcast interviews tend to be. So yeah, that's where the healing comes in. My father wasn't there when this was happening, and she was really great at hiding her abuse with me,
Of
but she
course.
definitely abused my brother at the kitchen table and was violent. And she had this, I almost feel like this spelling on the whole system. The whole system. That's a power, but it was a negative power when we think of dictators.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, it's interesting, and my brother, we haven't shared a lot of conversation about it. I know that he said, if I would have known, I would have protected you. And I believe he would have. We were very close, but there was a shaming involved when she was abusing me. She was screaming words, "I should never have had you. You're a selfish blah, blah, blah." Powerful spelling. And I
Hmm.
really believed her in some sense. I thought, if
Of
my brother
course.
knows, he's going to think I'm bad. So I'm not
Of
telling him,
course. Yeah.
like, so that type of thing too,
This is happening
how,
because it's your fault.
right.
That's what perpetrators are very good at doing, isn't it?
Yes, they
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. What's the age difference between you and your brother?
My brother's 3 years older.
Okay, so if you're between 8 and 12 here, he's between 11 and 15. It's not his responsibility. Oh,
No. Even though he took on a lot, I mean, we were very close. He took on a lot of
of course.
parenting type of
Yeah.
energy. And I feel like, in some senses, that we were kind of kindred in that way. Um, but we both had a lot of traumas as adults. And I tended to go down the path of healing them. And in my opinion, he kind of suppressed it, had a family, and didn't want to really go there.
Yeah, that's the adaptation that we were just talking about, which is when you go through the pain, what do you do? And the only thing that's really available to kids is to disconnect from it, to stuff it down. And that's very challenging to one recognize and accept that that's a pattern, but then to do something new. And most of the times when we do that, when we suppress it, we continue passing these patterns on to the next generation.
Yeah,
Do you have kids, Heather?
I do not.
You don't? Yeah.
Never been married.
Okay. Yeah. So in lots of ways, these patterns end with you.
They do, and with me. And I consciously, in my late 20s, early 30s, I had a lot of issues with marriage,
Hmm.
obviously. And I didn't want to repeat. I was really afraid of that.
Yeah.
And then when I started to get into trauma and working with a lot of mothers who did repeat and felt guilty
Hmm.
and shame for abusing their children, I started to sort of pat myself on the back for sort of some of the decisions I made,
Hmm.
not consciously. I did grieve at the end of my 30s the loss of not having a family. Um, there was something inside of me. I love children,
Hmm.
but at the same time, I'm not going to just bring in a soul with anybody, and I have to be healed. And that just took a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very challenging. I'm in my late 30s and I've made decisions not to have children too. So I understand what you're saying there, especially when there's this multi-generational programming to marry, have kids, follow that exact same path. There is a loss there. There is a grief there. And on the other hand, there's absolutely nothing wrong with focusing on healing this pain from the past.
Well, I'm grateful I did
Yeah.
because I'm actually my authentic self now, which is not like a slogan type thing. My inner child's very playful. She sings and dances and writes music, and I have a book series coming out that I'm really proud of. And
Hmm.
and it's coming from a place of love, actually. And so I'm really proud of myself that I took that hard road and started to feel who she really was. That when we think about those years at 8, 9 years old, she had to set herself aside, you know?
Yeah. This is interesting because you were doing dance. You were in the creative arts, and then you decided this just isn't quite right. So how is that different now that you're doing it from this place of authenticity?
How is it different? I'm not doing it for a place of approval.
Ah, so when you were originally in it, when did you start dancing and getting into the arts like that? How old were you, do you think?
My first tap shoes were age 3. I was doing a solo at age 5.
Wow.
My mom really wanted me to be famous, and
Ah,
yeah,
so it was a way to be good enough.
yes. So
Mm-hmm.
I trained
Approval.
seriously, and I luckily I had some skill and talent, but
Mm-hmm.
there was a price to it.
Of course there was. Yeah, it's coming from a place of trying to obtain the safety,
Yeah,
trying to achieve the acceptance, and
yeah.
yeah, you can never find it.
So now I have angels. I channel angels, not just one, but Mr. Rogers is one. Actually, and he directs me, and I feel their energies, and I put on shows
Hmm.
with them, and it's really magical, actually. And I don't really care, like, maybe someday I'll do it publicly on stage, I don't know, but I don't really care what people think.
Hmm.
Whereas, like, I think too, I was hiding sort of my mystical side a lot because my family's very structured, traditional. And when I started talking about past lives to my brother, and it was just like,
Yeah.
too much. But like for me, yeah, I just and really children, when you work with them and you let them take off these masks, they're geniuses in every way, shape, or form. I mean, I remember like this 4-year-old was talking of philosophy, and I thought to myself, this is a 4-year-old. And his vocabulary and communication skills are, and then I saw him walk out and put that mask on, and not speaking the same way with, caregivers. It's just fascinating to me. So, like,
Yeah.
I've been on a journey of healing my inner child, and now I try to make it a every day I play with that inner child, even if it's for 30 minutes.
So that's a very important practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you feeling right now telling me this?
It's just great to express it.
Yeah. So what are you feeling?
I'm feeling joy.
Yeah, you look very happy. Yeah, it's really nice to have that. And you're describing something that's very sad with this 4-year-old, which is it's something that happens to all of us, whether it's through trauma like what you and I have gone through, or the trauma that this 4-year-old's going through, where he has learned somewhere that being authentic, being playful, being this genius, as you described it, is bad.
Yeah.
And you have to suppress that and put a mask on. And so we learn very early that we have to suppress these parts of us. And this playful, creative part of us is not just essential for healthy development, it's who we are. It's essential for engagement in our species and in our communities. It's essential for every aspect of us. So to recover this is a very important part of regaining your authenticity and healing that past trauma.
Yes.
Can I ask, what does that process or practice look like?
Now?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I sometimes sit with my singing bowl.
Like a crystal singing bowl or a
Yep.
Tibetan
A
meadow one?
crystal. It's a crystal singing bowl, and
Hmm.
I will just chant chants. I know that I had a past life in India. Bless you.
Excuse me.
Yeah, bless you. I had a past life in India, which goes along with the Sanskrit. And so I just let my voice go wherever.
Mm.
Um, I go to several playgrounds now, right now. I don't want to say it's an assignment with Mr. Rogers, but sometimes he nudges me, you know. And on the playground, I'll dance around with music or work out. But I also enjoy, I will say there is a movement. I am seeing more fathers with their kids at the playground. No cell phones. This is a good thing. And it makes me happy to see that.
Yeah.
Makes me happy to see kids playing on a playground without these phones and devices and running and interacting with each other and sometimes crying. And I enjoy watching that actually right
Yeah.
now in my life.
Well, of course. I mean, it would have been nice if you would have had that.
Yes, yes. I think about, unfortunately, back then I played a lot, but I wasn't feeling anything inside
Why do you think that was?
because of all the brain damage. So
Yeah.
I wasn't capable of feeling it. So I'm just outside, I'm giving energy out, but there's the
Ah,
block of the energy. Yeah, that's deep. That's
yeah. I
deep.
mean, that's kind of, from what it sounds like, your mother, it was her pattern, so to speak, was to suck you dry, to suck
Mhm.
everybody dry around her.
Mhm.
And so, of course, you develop the function of just letting it out and
Mhm.
being on autopilot, so to speak.
Oh, yes. For a lot of my life, in the last couple years, I've really had to take a step back,
Hmm.
let go of a lot of people and boundaries, energetic
Yeah.
boundaries,
Oh, yeah.
and I love it.
What
Just
was that like for you? Because again, just expressing things when, you learn as a kid that it's so dangerous, but to learn to express boundaries is a lot of the time so threatening and dangerous when we start to do it. What was it like for you to start setting boundaries with who's in your life and into what degree in engagement they're in your life?
well, that's an interesting question. I was giving out so much that when I just stopped giving, nobody showed up.
Yeah.
So there's a realization that you don't really have friends. Your business partners are only there when you give them a referral.
Uh,
So it was that type of real extreme.
yeah.
I also would just find myself because when I would go into environments, I would overgive conversations and talking because I want to connect. Somebody be my friend, somebody. And that started to stop when I started to pour more time into myself. And honestly, I started to connect to nature and animals. I
Yeah.
really feel animals are incredible teachers.
Oh, yeah.
I connect to this donkey. There's this farm locally, and this donkey, we have this relationship and I feed the
Hmm.
donkey. So the shamanism started to come in to my life naturally. One of the harder lessons and this was with my father teaching me after he passed away and my angelic team teaching me, it's your job to take care of that little child. It's your job to take care of yourself. These people only care about their end.
Yeah.
They're not showing up when you're sick. They're not showing up when you can't pay your bills. They're not. And that was a hard reality. I lost a lot of people in these patterns because of the setup of my childhood. But I would literally be driving and see a homeless person. And my instinct is to give something, to give money, to give something. It's always been my wiring. But the exercise was to pull off the road, send them energy, but to meditate is in my highest purpose. Is it in their highest purpose to receive this? Will they even understand how much I've sacrificed in my life to have a roof over my head?
Yeah.
I've worked 3 jobs when I was having those massive stroke pain. It was tough. It was really
Yeah.
scary,
Yeah.
And so it started to understand that you can't just always give out. There's a cause and effect. There's karma. There's people that have to decide to give. So I'm in a position right now in my life of receiving. What am I receiving? You know? And right now I receive a lot from my angels. I receive a lot from the Divine Mother. And that
You
really
receive
brings
a
a
lot
lot.
from yourself.
I receive a lot from myself. That's a great one.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, because what you're talking about is you needed acceptance. You needed somebody to see you, somebody to pay attention and to be attuned to you. And as soon as you learn to start doing that for yourself, I don't need to do it for all these people anymore.
Right.
And all those relationships just fade away
Yeah.
and wither.
Yeah.
And that can also be very painful for a lot of people, very difficult. I know it was for me when I had the realization that if I stopped trying so hard to please other people, like my family, would any of them ever even reach out to me or even say anything to me? And so I stopped. And then sure enough, years go by and not a single person, 10, 15 years go by. And maybe they'll show up every once in a while and just try and start a fight because that's all they know how to do is just take. And yeah, you
Mm.
have to set boundaries and take care of yourself. And the moment that you start doing that, wow, isn't it amazing how so many other channels, we could say, you're calling them your angels or from the animals even,
Yeah.
um, as soon as you start to create that pattern of caring for yourself, oh, now it opens up in lots of other ways.
Oh, it does. And it's beautiful. I mean, it's just really cool. I just, yeah, I could write books on just the animals alone.
I hear you. Some of my best teachers have been dogs.
Ah,
Yeah, I still my most precious little girl. She's 15, going on 16 next month. Yeah, yeah,
that's
she's been
beautiful.
incredible. She taught me so many things about gentleness and presence and play. All those really important things. Because yeah, when we go through things like what you and I have gone through, is we lose all of that.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned the dog because when my father passed, he directed me to gyrokinesis and gyrotonics, which is all about these straps and these movements and these breath patterns that deal with martial arts. It deals with modern dance. It deals with a lot of different things. And the instructor that I ended up going to, I didn't recognize that she had been my tap dancing student years ago at Point Park. But she was in a building almost abandoned, and it's the building my mom went to elementary school in. Hmm. I know. Talk about healing generational. And she rented this room. You would never think it's not a yoga center, it's not a wellness center. It's just this room with very little. And that's where a lot of magical beings would come in. She was open to that. But my first dog came in, and she had a dog there that day, and he ran to the door. He sensed and my dog was named Candy, which is ironic because we have a sugar addiction, but in my mom's lineage. But I realized the dog witnessed it, the abuse. You know, the dog was the watcher, and the dog sat all the time around me. It's just interesting what animals can be and do. And so that interaction of having the dog's energy in the room that day was just this awakening of like, oh no, there was somebody there.
Yeah, I wasn't totally alone. No, I wasn't completely alone. I know exactly what you mean.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's quite incredible. Oh, it's being seen, being connected to, having somebody there, being there for yourself. And then, of course, seeing all the areas where we wouldn't have been able to see these things, like having the dog there. Wouldn't have been able to see it if we were still caught up in the disconnecting from the pain. It's quite amazing what happens when we come back to being present.
Yeah. I mean, it took a lot of rewiring my brain. So you're doing assignments to dismantle and to get a stronger brain, more intellect, more focus, all that stuff, which is pretty cool that you can do that. It's like this programming, this computer
Mm-hmm.
chip. But now to sit for hours in silence, I never thought I would be able to do that.
Of course.
My first yoga class, and I always say this, when I was 25 years old, I literally was like this, sitting,
Yeah.
I,
In panic.
yeah, yeah, panic. What's going to happen next? I can't
Yeah.
calm down because something's
Mm-hmm.
going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
almost like when your body was developing, when your nervous system was developing, when your emotional circuits, your hormonal circuits, everything's developing. It's developing in relationship to your environment. And it's almost like your environment was incredibly dangerous. And so
yes.
there was a very high level, a high baseline of panic. And so that's what your body developed to. And then later in life, we're sitting here like, oh gosh, I can't sit still. I'm just so all the time. What's going to happen? I might be sitting completely alone in a room that's completely safe, but my body thinks that there's something that's going to happen, and so my mind goes a million miles a minute figuring out what's the threat. Oh, it's incredible
Yeah,
to
a
be
lot
able
of
to sit.
generational PTSD for me, not just with that lifestyle of growing up, but
Mm-hmm.
also within my lineages, the PTSD and a lot of trauma shaking. So I did a lot of involuntary shaking out,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of pain. But yeah, I mean, it's so people always comment whether I'm on a podcast or how calming I am, and I think to myself, it's a great compliment. I totally take it, but I think to myself, you have no idea, like, what it's taken to get here, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Because I think, like, that's what this is about. I wanna remind people it was a journey, you know? It's
Yeah.
not easy. It wasn't easy for me because of the setup.
Yeah. There's this story of the violinist. He did Schindler's List, and he was playing this wonderful concert in New York.
Mm.
And he's in this, entire giant concert hall packed, and everybody's just paying such close attention. And he's giving, the performance of a lifetime. And so, after these things, usually the performers will stick around, and you can go and say, hi, thank you, I appreciate it, so on. And this guy comes up to him and he says, I would give my whole life to be able to play violin like you did tonight. And he kind of smiles and goes, I did.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, that one performance right there was the fruits of a whole lifetime of work and practice to get there. And yeah, you might be very calm now, and that's the fruits of a whole lifetime of practice and going through all of the panic and difficulties that you went through.
Absolutely. That's powerful. Thank you for sharing that. And it's also, how do I put this? When you get to this place, you do have to be very particular about the energies that you allow to enter
Mm-hmm.
and why you allow them to enter,
Yeah. Boundaries.
the boundaries, And I had to let go of a lot of stuff in the last year business wise because of that.
Of
And
course.
Mr. Rogers would help. Literally, he's really good with electronics. He'll literally turn off the computer if he doesn't want me to talk to you, or he'll all of a sudden the meeting's canceled,
Mm-hmm.
or if
Yeah.
there were lessons I needed to learn, repetitive patterns. But um, when you get to a point where you do have to be selective because you've
Yeah.
earned your peace,
Yeah.
and my peace is priceless,
And it needs to be protected.
and it needs to be protected.
Just like when you were a kid, you needed boundaries and protection. Nobody ever taught us how to do that, but we can learn how to do it throughout life. Yeah. I'm curious, I wanted to ask you, when we're talking about these intergenerational patterns of trauma, the same patterns of abuse and trauma or adaptations to trauma that have gone through the generations. So your dad has it, he's totally disconnected. Your mom has it, she's sucking energy from everybody. She's in so much pain on her own that she can't be alone with it. And the only thing that she can do is bring others into it. And she learned that from somewhere. So this has gone through all the generations. We don't even know where it began. You have worked diligently with this pattern and have transformed it in lots of ways. So I'm curious, my question is, what do you think happens to all the people who came before us who carry that pattern when we start to transform it?
So I'm going to speak for myself.
Hmm.
Part of my experience when my father passed away and I started to hear him and he started to turn on the computer and show me things literally. So it was like a matrix, which might seem very to somebody like, oh, that's like well, if you can make a movie of anything, it can be created. It can be a reality. It's just the way it is here on Mother Earth. That really started to break more of my matrix thinking. I do believe that as I continue on my path, and part of that is my books, and part of that is getting on a platform and speaking, that my maternal women, specifically the ones of slavery and trafficked, they have an energetic healing. And some of them are very much a part of who I am right now. Um, so I've had very specific souls from my bloodline on my mom's side come in for healing. And it has allowed me to understand, okay, my mom has a very, very specific, we could label it slave owner, predatorial, trafficking, religious, sacrifice children programs. Does that come from? Well, I don't need to decide that. Like, I don't need to go through her life records and understand because that's her journey. But what I have decided is that energy, I don't want it to be a part of our communities anymore. I don't want it to be a part of Mother Earth anymore. So if I can bring healing, voice, and tools, then I can start to diminish and dismantle that programming because she may have past lives with a lot of that programming. That's for her to figure out and do her own work. But what I do know from my maternal grandmother, who was sort of prophesized a little bit at the end of her life with me, we were close and we hid our relationship, is that and there are many maternal women that were severely repressed. I mean, when you're talking trafficked, when you're talking slavery, we're talking chains and brutal. So that has all come through. But it's still individual because we all still have a unique soul database. So you could be in a karmic family, you could be in a soul tribe family, you could be in a mixed. And so we all have to be responsible I feel, for our choices. So I'm very conscious of my decisions as I move forward and how I am. And even how I speak about my mom, like I would never want to reincarnate and do that again. But if it's to allow me to help dismantle this evilness, then the assignment is being done. I'm doing it now. You know, that's the warrior within me, but I wouldn't want to do it again. We can't keep repeating this stuff. And so it's not just about healing. I'm at a point now in wanting to address leadership, wanting to address what we're really doing on a bigger front. And so
Hmm.
when you talk to me about my dad and protection, which is brilliant, um, I feel that a lot of healers in the divine feminine have been severely unprotected and targeted over and over
Of
again and
course.
sucked. And so we need more divine masculines to have this conversation of what can we do and how do we step
Hmm.
in the systems, so that I don't have to be a masculine, like a shadow masculine, like I was in my 20s, inflamed and rough. But my dad, when he passed, gave me all the accurate things to get me to this point. And our past lives, I believe there was a soul contract to do that. So that's what makes this very complicated. Does that
Hmm.
make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So through awareness, agency, choice, responsibility, accountability, there's relief.
Ah, yeah.
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 Yeah, those unhealed patterns, unhealed pains, they become destiny. We just keep reliving them. They keep coming back around until we process them. And it's really important to do exactly what you're doing here in terms of taking the responsibility to say, I'm not going to let this be in this world, at least through me anymore, and at least in my proximity. Because, yeah, there's always forces that are out there that are pushing for those. They want those. They want that pain. They want that destruction. They want that disconnect. A lot of forces thrive on that.
Mhm.
And we've heard of these names all throughout the ages: Moloch, Wetsubuchitili, the war gods, right? That come around and they thrive on the despair, and they attack people. They
Mhm.
attack the other forces that
Mhm.
are trying to create something else. So, yeah, I completely hear you on we need to create some boundaries, some protections to have this, and we'll see where things are going in grand scheme of things here in this world, because it seems like things are getting more intense because a lot of people aren't facing it right now. Uh, so yeah, I'm really grateful to see the work that you're doing out there. Um, to see you taking such accountability for the things that were handed to you in life, to take some responsibility and to create new patterns. It's really nice to see the joy, the happiness, the play come through because, yeah, we all deserve that. We don't deserve to always be in that intensity. We don't have to be. We can be in joy and gentleness and humor with it as well. So it's really nice to see that here.
Thank you.
Yeah, Heather. Tell me, I think that's a great place to conclude here. Tell everybody, anybody who's listening, where can they find your books, your work, anything more about you?
Well, it's really easy. HeatherAnnFerri.com. That's my website. And my first book, well, my second book that I wrote with my father, will be out at the end of the month on Amazon. So if you follow me on Facebook or LinkedIn, whichever channel you prefer, um, I'll definitely be promoting it and talking about it. There's what's nice about we decided the chapters. So we rewrote book one that I wrote 11 years ago. We rewrote it. We took stuff out and we added spiritual questions at the end of each chapter and medical meditations so that you could start to do what I did. And if it gets to be too confusing, then you can work with a therapist, a coach, a spiritual counselor on what those questions start to dive into. That's a little bit of Mr. Rogers too. And book two will be out shortly, probably by the end of the year. And then book three. Book one is like the foundation because book two is pretty intense with my past lives, my dad's death. The Divine Mother sends me to specific land. I start to learn information specifically in America. So it's pretty intense. And my dad didn't want that to be published without people having a foundation and also a foundation for yourself. Because as you start to develop and heal, you're going to know more about your ancestors, not from what somebody else said, but from what your body is saying, from your connection and meditation. You're going to start to be led the way I'm led in book two. So we want to teach you how to do it as opposed to just sharing it, you know? So
Hmm.
my dad really focused on the manual aspect after each chapter because he felt that everybody that wants to deserves to heal or become their own, in essence, healer. And, sometimes it does take some tools, like, when we mentioned today. And so this gives you that example of, well, what were some of those tools? And you may take one and leave the other behind. And I also think it's a great tool for, like I said, coaches and therapists, because when you're working all the time, you may not be focusing on certain aspects. So this will bring in your world like, oh, this would be really good for the client. Let's work on this. That type of thing.
Incredible. Yeah, that's really important. We can get caught up so much in the grind of work, which is usually rooted in, and this probably resonates from what you were saying earlier. I get to be important. I get to be valuable. I get to be accepted.
Yeah.
And that's not the mark. That's, again,
No.
playing out those exact same patterns of trauma, just in a new way. And we'll call it people pleasing or caregiving. We often learn that if I'm going to get attention, if I'm going to be valuable, then I got to care for other people or sacrifice myself to make other people happy. And
Mm,
so it's really nice to see
mm,
some resources getting out there, because I think a lot of people are starting to realize this, especially with the changing in the structures of markets and labor forces and things like that. So really nice to hear all of this. I'll be sure to link all of those in the show notes because I hope that some people will come through this.
thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Thank you. And I send you blessings, your audience blessings. This has been not only a joy today, but a healing.
Thank you, Heather.